So what I'm going to do this week is jump into a full video of death penalties, give you a full overview, a breakdown, tell you some things that I find could potentially go wrong with the system, and show you some stuff that Intrepid is excelling at. This system is going to be something you use every single day or every time you're on the game, and it's going to be a daily thing for most players within Ashes of Creation, and I think it's an extremely important system and a nice and unique system that Intrepid's built here, as well as talking about what you could potentially lose or what you will lose when you'll die. And not just that, is it better to be flagged, is it not better to flag, and how it's really going to affect people coming over to play Ashes of Creation if they've never played an MMO like this, because the way it's going to play out is going to be vastly different than most MMOs we have on offer today. So the basics of death penalties: when a player dies, you're going to disintegrate into a pile of ash. Now the effects around that look pretty fucking cool, but that's another video totally. But this ash is going to contain items lost by the player. The amount dropped depends on what flagging state that player is going to be in. The ash piles itself can be looted not only by the player that kills you or by the enemy, but by anyone around that area, and they will not gain any corruption penalty from doing this. So you're potentially going to see people just waiting around and lurking around, maybe hiding out, waiting for folk to die just so they can jump in quickly and steal them resources for themselves and then shoot out of there. If the area is packed enough, or PK zone, or maybe a PvE difficult zone, and enough people are dying, it could be a potential where that maybe lower level or less skilled guys could go out there and farm up these resources with not really having to do much work, or potentially call it an AFK farmer, hide out, make sure no one sees you, and just every now and again dip out and just loot these bags. So I actually don't mind this system. I think it needs some work, and we're going to see a lot of development on it through Alpha 2. But what you could do is you could have a corrupted player going around killing everyone, and then their mate could literally just pick up their bag. Now you see this corrupted player on the map, but it doesn't really matter because the guy that's got the resources, their mate's already shot off, and the corrupted guy doesn't even have the resources. So there already is a little way you could potentially work this system. There's a lot of ways you could work the bounty system and the corruption system, and these kind of all combine together. I think Intrepid's going to have a very difficult job balancing this all out to not get exploited. So getting into what a non-combatant in comparison to a combatant and corrupted player drops. Now a non-combatant on the good side of things isn't actually going to experience the major part of the debt. They're going to suffer death penalties only at 1x rate, and that'll stem right across the board to negative experience debt, which will scale approximately 2 to 3% of the total XP for a max level player. It's also going to refer to skill and stat dampening, lower HP and mana, and lower gear skill, even durability loss. This is both gold and a material sink, so you don't really want to be getting hit and smashed and dying all the time. Not just that, your entire guild went out and they've prepped this awesome raid, this boss or something that you just all want to go and try and farm up some rare item drop. Well, you might not have the best chances of getting that because you're going to suffer a reduction in loot drop rates from monsters. And then we get onto the fact that you're going to drop a percentage of carried gatherables and processed gatherables, and also if you're carrying any certificates, they're potentially going to drop as well, so it's big losses. Not just that, after you die, you can't just spawn back on that death point. You're going to be spawned back at the closest active respawn point. Now, this could potentially be close by, or it could be the arse end of nowhere and you really need to get back to that bag, so the chances of you getting back to it in time are pretty limited. So it shows that the world of Vera is extremely dangerous and you want to be immersed in it and be concentrating, because at any time you could really suffer some serious penalties, and I think that brings a lot of life and fun to the game. It's a lot different than what other MMOs have on offer at the minute. So this part I have had comments and people do seem to be a bit confused by it. If you're a combatant and you're a fighter and you're fighting back, you're actually going to suffer less penalties. You're going to suffer half the rate of normal penalties of a non-combatant. So what Intrepid is actually trying to do here is reward PvP. So if you're a PvEer and you don't really like fighting, well, you're actually rewarded for defending yourself. Even if you die and lose, well, you actually lose less, which is pretty bang on if you think about it. If we look at corrupted players though, they're going to suffer penalties at a 4x rate. So that's a fairly substantial increase of losses from being a PKer. They're also going to have the chance to drop items that's based on their corruption score, so the lower the score, potentially lose less. The higher the score or the more PKing they're doing, the chance they're going to drop weapons potentially, gear, and a lot more resources. And that doesn't even dip into the experience stat dampening when they're in PvP situations due to the corruption, and they'll be respawned at random locations in the vicinity of their death. So they're going to have these great losses, potential gear drops, then they're going to have a lot more resource drops, then they're going to have stat dampening. So the super corrupt ones who go hardcore PKing, they're actually going to be easier to defend against. So if you're fighting with these guys and you're maybe not the most confident or best PvPer, you know that these guys have some debuffs, so that might give you the confidence you need to maybe have a go at them and take them out. And if you're on par with them, they have them debuffs, you don't, so you have the upper hand there. What do you guys think about that? Are you going to flag and kind of go with the same vibes I'm getting? Or are you going to not flag and hope that the greater good of people in Veta don't come and kill you, which I don't know if we'll see all too often? Or are you going to be going fully hardcore corrupt? And are you going to be the guys killing everyone within Veta? Now, I suppose I'm being a pessimist there, presuming everyone's just going to kill you. The other side to that coin is, if you are a non-combatant and you come across decent people, say I see a lower level guy and he's a non-combatant, I probably wouldn't attack him because I know he's not up for PvP and he's just cracking on. But then again, you will get some guys that don't even care about that and might take advantage of that situation and just smite you altogether. Once again, that's just me being a speculation lord. We don't really know how it's going to play out or how this community is going to play the game, really. I know we've had Alpha 1 testing, but we really need to get into Alpha 2 with most of the systems and see how the community works and how the game goes and how it just flows. So the one good thing I can say, and I do really like the death penalty system, so don't get me wrong when I talk about potential exploits when it comes to corruption and bounty hunting. I am not having a dig at Intrepid here. I think they're on something really fucking good, but I'm always going to address when I think exploits can be there, because what's the point in us testing or giving feedback if we sugarcoat it? Like, that's just the facts. If we want this game to be good, we have to say our honest opinions. But back onto the positive side of it, if you're doing something like guild wars or sieges or caravans, you're not actually going to take any of the death penalties, and I think that's really cool because it means people are constantly incentivized and want to take part in these and they know there's no repercussions. However, they have said that if you're taking part in these caravans, that your gear will degrade if you die. So I've seen from that people are like, you know, why get rid of all the death penalties and not get rid of this one as well? Well, potentially the reason for them doing this is if your armor's degrading during caravan PvPs and normal PvP, which means you constantly have to farm resources or you have to source resources, you have to use the marketing board, you have to use play stalls, you potentially have to trade with people, and it means that the crafters have something to do. You're constantly pumping money back into the economy, or you're doing things within the game, meaning these systems are constantly being replayed. Like I've said 100 times over, replayability is something you need to keep longevity within a game, and I think something like this does work to an extent. On to another part of this system that I really love, and it's the animal husbandry side of it. So say you've got a mule or a mount or whatever you're traveling around on, and you're just going through the world, and maybe you're a guy and you thought, well, I'm just going to pack up my mule, fill that up with some decent loot, I've got less weight on my body, and then I can keep farming. I would say the best thing you could potentially do is have half the resources on you and maybe half on the tame, depending on how heavy it is, because if you get killed, it's not like you can just run back and, you know, get the stuff off your tame. It's safe. They can kill your tame and loot the resources off that said tame. So I think that brings even more like immersion and more planning and strategy, where you're like, okay, potentially it's better to have half and half, because if I die and get back to my tame, I can still shoot away with the rest of the half of loot, or if the tame dies, I can maybe scatter and get away with this, rather than if the tame dies, you lose a bigger percentage, if you die, you lose a bigger percentage of them resources. So in the eyes of an attacker, this really dips into the risk versus reward, because that guy potentially knows that, and say I'm gonna kill someone and I'm wanting some resources that they've got, I'm gonna kill them and then I'm going to kill their tame, because that doubles the amount of income or resource or loot I can potentially get, rather than killing them and then not killing their tame. It's kind of a no-brainer, so this will happen a lot within Veta. Another thing with certain abilities potentially getting pushed off cliff for knockback effects and certain spells and whatnot, you really want to be careful where you're traversing within Ashes of Creation, because if a player falls while on a mount, the mount's going to take some of the damage first, and any of the remaining damage the mount cannot take, it will overflow onto the player. So simplified, if you're maybe not paying attention potentially, or something goes on and you go flying off the side of a cliff and it's a massive drop, your team will take a great deal of damage, but if it's too much, then your player will take damage, resulting in not only your team dying, you will die as well. So if any of you guys playing in game have the peasant-like skills I do in real life when it comes to swimming, and you drown, that will be another way of dying in Vera. But the plus side of that is, if you do die, you will respawn on the nearest shoreline. To round up the end part of the information, I think this is make or break for some people, your hard-earned gold. Well, the good thing is, you do have a lot of losses, but the loss that you don't get is you will never lose gold upon death, and I think that's really nice because it's going to be a hard commodity to come by, or maybe you will come by it, but you're going to need a lot of it, and gold is going to really be the maker for you in a game. You need money for pretty much everything, and you want money to partake in buying resources, speeding up leveling, pretty much everything. So the fact that you're not losing this gold, I really like that they've added that in there, and I've already thought about it. Adding the fact that looting players' ashes doesn't trigger the flagging system brings in a whole different element of player base that are just going to be scavenging left, right and centre to pick up as much loot as they can. So to round the video up, I really do think the foundations for the death penalties and the way dying works in Ashes of Creation is extremely unique. Obviously I know there's some similarities to other MMOs, but if you actually round it up and you look at what they're doing and they're combining everything, I think it's unique in comparison to any MMO we're going to get anytime soon. I really do like it. I think the foundations for it are strong. I do think during Alpha 2 it's going to need fine-tuned and tested the shit out of, and you know, some tweaks made, so when we come to post-launch, we go in there and it's really strong. It's working for what it's meant to do, and we're just enjoying the game, and it doesn't affect us in a negative way by people exploiting certain things within it. But as always, I really do appreciate you watching the video, and if you've got any feedback, any comments, any suggestions for Intrepid, or any ideas you want to drop down below, let me know because I'll always get back to them comments. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I really do appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.